All right. Hello there, everybody. My name is Sean Connor. I am the community director with Buildbox. I am here with Jake Parker and Jack Griffin of Kwalee. We recently, last week, announced our partnership to expand for the community, invest in the community of Buildbox. And we are here for a Q&A. A lot of you have sent in questions. I'm sure you'll have live questions. We'll probably attack those at the end. But first, I'd just like to let Jake and Jack introduce themselves.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here. I'm really excited about this partnership. So I'm Jake. I'm a publishing manager at Kwalee. I've been in the games industry for just over 5 years now. And in the last just over a year, I've been working with Kwalee, working with developers to kind of test their games and work on games to get them scaled up to be global hits.
Once again, thank you for having us as well. I'm Jack, so I'm another publishing manager from Kwalee. I've been with Kwalee since the start of the publishing department. Was quite involved in kind of setting up some of the processes, testing the games, and then since then, we've done a lot of work on games like Rocket Sky, Overtake, Submarine Jump, all that have gone on to achieve millions and millions of downloads. So kind of lots of perspective on a variety of different games that come through our pipelines.
That's awesome. So very exciting stuff. Very exciting for Kwalee, Buildbox, the community, and everything looking forward. I guess, should we just kick into the questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So first up, what does this partnership mean for me as a creator?
I think one of the biggest sort of benefits is that suddenly when you're making a game in Buildbox and you're wondering, what next? How do I get that publicity? How do I get it out into the charts and kind of make it stand out? You have this fantastic access to a publisher. So from your journey of beginning development all the way through to, scaling a game up, actually seeing it succeed, having teams on hand to assist with monetization, user acquisition, QA, people to bounce ideas off of and get that feedback from other people working in the industry as well. It's just kind of full support from the beginning and eventual end of the journey for your development cycle.
Yeah, it's a really straightforward route to kind of get your game out in front of potentially millions of users. And it means all of the support that a publisher can provide allows you to just kind of focus on the actual game as opposed to, as Jack said, how you're going to kind of manage getting it to market, etc.
Awesome. Why should I use a publisher such as Kwalee to publish my game? Do I really need a publisher to succeed?
Jack, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So one of the key benefits of having a publisher is, when you look at the games that are in the top of the charts that they have kind of managed to break out in this really competitive space, a lot of them have really large marketing budgets behind them. And, not all developers maybe have access to that or the backing of, a 10-man team to help constantly reiterate on ads and produce the visuals to try and actually get people in through the door into your game. And having a publisher kind of helps with all of that. And if you don't have one in a space as competitive, as hyper casual or casual mobile games, then it can be really hard to kind of do that as a solo developer. So it's just about leveling the playing field as well. So.
And in our jobs as publishing managers, a lot we're working with these teams that are kind of creating creative videos, that ads for the games, working with our design team, with the development team, and providing that kind of tech support, design support, and essentially any support is needed to get the game from the point of testing to helping to scale it up to a global hit.
Yeah. So you'd say the collaborative effort definitely makes for a better product and a better result for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
With the developers that we're working with as well, I'm sure it's the same for Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we have people that come to us who maybe don't have like a complete game yet as well. Just having someone to bounce ideas off of, things like that. If you are a solo developer or a team, just getting those different perspectives can always help too.
Absolutely. All right. For our next question. So if someone wants to go ahead and submit their game, at what stage would you like to see the potential game, finished product, or prototypes? How many levels are needed?
Gotcha. So I think it typically it varies. In order to test to get like an effective gauge of retention, what you're going to be looking at is you want around 10 or 15 minutes of gameplay in there. Jack, I know that we both work with developers at different stages in the process. Like, it's not like we're expecting that full game as the final product, but we are working with developers to kind of talk about their concept and go back and forth and have that kind of creative process where we develop the concept from just an idea into that prototype that's testable.
Yeah, and I think as Jake said, as you kind of build that long-term relationship, with a publisher too, maybe you already have a game to start with, and you go and you showcase that, and that goes through testing, and then maybe for your next game, because you already have those points of contact, you're building up those relationships in the industry. You'll have someone who you can go to at an earlier stage with either like an idea or a concept, and kind of start. We'll be happy to get involved even if it is that early stage. And we find that the longer we work with people, the earlier we're getting involved with design ideas and just helping to guide on like recent trends in the market, what's working, what's not.
And like we're happy to kind of review and test games that are on either iOS or Google Play, so there's no kind of restrictions there.
Awesome. So very important to nurture that relationship and build a strong foundation for the collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What is the process of game selection once we submit our games to you to publish? On which basis do you select which games to publish and which ones not to?
Yeah, so we do try and be very open when we're looking at games. When they come through to us, typically it will be either an app store link or a video of some gameplay footage. And if something has like really nice polished visuals, it can help it stand out immediately. If it's got that vibrant, colorful appearance that you see in those games that are like top in the charts, then obviously immediately we're going to be very interested. But even then, if it's maybe a team doesn't have an artist or they're weaker on that side, if it's a unique mechanic that we haven't seen before, once again, that's something that is really important for the core foundation of a game. And anything that is kind of unique or ticks those boxes for hyper casual of being snackable and having that stickiness of I want to play again, is something that we'll immediately be interested in and be communicating with and help them grow that game, that idea.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like if you have a game or a concept at the moment, you're not sure whether you should submit the game, I think send it anyway, because we're always happy to look at things early and give you that feedback to kind of guide you and save you time in working on something that may not necessarily be a direction that markets effectively, for instance.
Awesome. Yeah. So you said if a team has a weakness, so that could also be a benefit, right? If you notice that, hey, this is a trend, your team might be weak in this area, that can be some constructive criticism that can come out of the benefit of the relationship, and you can help shore up those weaknesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's finding someone to help cover your weaknesses, whether it's in design or concepts or maybe execution. Sometimes you need that little bit of extra feedback and support of the little polishing touches that can take a game from a really good idea to something that's going to really sort of break the charts and succeed.
Absolutely. All right. Next question will be, what happens if my game doesn't meet Kwalee's KPIs?
So I think most of the time, if we see potential in a game, we will help you to kind of improve it. If we test a game and we see that maybe the CPI isn't quite low enough or the retention's not quite high enough, we're not going to kind of dismiss you at that point. We're more than happy to keep working with you and help to improve that game. We're also not averse to kind of giving advice on whether it's worth trying a new concept and testing that out to just see if that works. I know, Jack, when you were working on Rocket Sky, there were some kind of changes that were made in the game that you worked really closely with the developer on, right?
Yeah, and it can be quite rare for a game to kind of come through and immediately have super high retention or good CPIs. And I think that working with games that don't meet those KPIs, that maybe don't pass first time round, is really important. So being able to once again provide that feedback, and then even if it is an idea that maybe doesn't work out, just being able to point out, here's where you did really, really well. Here's, maybe something to keep in mind for next time. And over time, just kind of growing that skill set, that knowledge set for the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, and I imagine with the speed that you can prototype and pivot with Buildbox, that's got to help things if, you have to make changes or try a different idea to get those KPIs hitting the mark.
Absolutely. I mean, hyper-casual is, casual as well is a really, really fast-paced industry. And so having access to something like Buildbox, where it really helps you, build a game in a way that's accessible for everyone, that's understandable and easy to do, and ultimately it's fast as well. So it fits really, really well into that mobile market, and it's something that we're using, that you've seen lots of people use too, and it can really help to kind of accelerate your development process. So.
Fantastic. All right. So with all that in mind, what type of hyper-casual game would you suggest for game developers to focus on creating, and why?
I think there's an endless kind of opportunity in terms of what type of hyper-casual game you're looking at creating. Like, Kwalee is a very creative company, so we try and foster a lot of creativity with our internal team as well as the developers that we're working with. And I think limiting to specific themes or types of hyper-casual games can only serve in that respect to kind of limit your creativity. So I think we're always going to be able to spot trends that are working well in the charts, and we can share that information with developers and kind of workshop different ideas for prototypes that could potentially capitalize on that. Like maybe we're seeing a lot of stacking games or running games, etc. And I think there's always kind of endless opportunities for different types of hyper-casual games within that.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. And I think as well, like in terms of genres, we're involved in not just, typical arcade games. We see lots of success with like simulation games or puzzle games or idle games. And even though, one genre might be more common, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, submit that idea or give it a chance, because, it's a huge market. There's lots of things that will work, and, you will see lots of different genres kind of succeeding as well. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. All right. So some people say hyper-casual games only give short-term revenue. Is this true?
No. So I'll let Jack handle most of this one. My input is that no, the length of our publishing deals is typically around 3 years, and we kind of continue to work with developers during that cycle to help make updates to the game and continue to earn revenue for both the developer and the publisher. And Jack, and then you've got some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a really common perception, because people look at hyper casual, they see maybe games that are smaller than what they're typically used to. But the strength of hyper casual is they're typically very appealing to millions and millions of people. It's something that people of all different gaming backgrounds, even non-gamers, kind of get involved with. And when you're monetizing something over time, it's the retention that. The duration of retention that we look at might not be the same as mid-core games, where they're looking at 30, 60 days onwards. In hyper-casual, it's usually more focused in the earlier days, but that almost conveyor belt of users, of people playing the game, having their fun. Maybe they do leave after a couple of weeks, but by then there's so many more people that are interested in this genre, that that monetization goes on for years and years, and the retention, the monetization throughout that period stays really, really strong as well. We're seeing strong performing games well past their 1 or 2 year mark. So.
And I think it means that as a developer, you don't necessarily have to invest those years of time updating the game and improving the game and continually adding content to it. There's a point where, because you're moving through those users, you're able to keep that same kind of level of content. So as a developer, you can focus on the next thing and the new game that you've been thinking of while you've been kind of finishing off that game. Because that's always the case, right? You're working on one thing and you come up with another idea, and you want to kind of get set on that, essentially.
So absolutely plenty of opportunity in hyper-casual then.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. What would be better between an endless game mode and a level game mode?
So I would say a level-based game mode. because it gives the player the kind of feeling of progression, feeling like they are moving through these levels. There are also a lot of kind of endless games that we have published as Kwalee, like Rocket Sky is an example of that. I'll let Jack kind of talk through it. But you kind of have this upgrade system where, as opposed to it just being endless and then trying again, you feel like you're upgrading, like you're getting better each and every time that you run through that gameplay loop.
Yeah, and as Jake mentioned, it just comes back to that feeling of progression for a player. So, having levels in a game is an easy way to kind of achieve that, of feeling, I'm on level 5, 6, 7, I'm progressing. But even if something isn't in that typical level format, using Rocket Sky as an example, you see your history, your best performance mark, you go through, you beat that. You actually have physical upgrades where you see the level of them go from like 5 to 6, and just anything that you can provide to a player to help them feeling like they are experiencing new things or moving forward, just kind of stops any kind of stagnation. And in these more recent trends, we've been seeing level-based games typically outperform their endless counterparts.
Awesome. All right, our next question comes from Ilya, who is awake at 3 a.m. watching us. So shout out to Ilya. She wants to know, as a publisher, what kind of monetization do you look for or prefer in a game? Straight out purchase game from store, or in-app purchases with advertising and paid removal of advertising, or in-app purchasing with no ads? I'm considering just having in-app purchases for character skins, which can also be bought with coins and gems, and a piggy bank system similar to Candy Crush for level continuation. What do you think?
Gotcha. That's a good question. It's impressive that you're staying awake until 3 to watch us. Thank you. So one thing I would say is in hyper casual, we're focused on ad monetization. It's the majority of our revenue comes from ads, and there are kind of strategies you can employ to make that work. So in the example you gave, where you were looking at kind of having in-app purchases for character skins, that could be unlocked for a rewarded video, for instance, which is an ad that's shown in exchange for some kind of gameplay cosmetic or new content.
Absolutely, yeah, and we do see lots of games, that come to us monetized in different ways as well. And I would say, if you're looking at implementing ads or versus IAPs, having a game that's free is obviously accessible to a lot more players. And when you do provide those IAPs, it tends to be icing on the cake. It's the important bit is to have that core foundation of a fun game that's retaining players. It's people having fun playing it, and then if you're able to provide that extra little bit of content that I'm enjoying this game, I'll have that IAP, I'll purchase a skin, then that's fantastic. But if you're able to implement ads into a fun game that is people are enjoying, and you're able to have that kind of guidance as to finding the right balance of it, then it's definitely what we'd recommend. If you're looking at longer term revenue, or kind of the just first attempt at having a go at a fully fledged monetized game.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, there's we're always testing and trying to look at what is the kind of right type of monetization and what works within a rapidly changing market where there are so many different games. So a lot of the time it can kind of vary based on the game itself and what works for that type of game. But in terms of revenue that we're making at the moment, it's primarily from ads, but we're open to working with developers who have got games that maybe they've already implemented IAPs and want to look at a different way of going, or maybe that's working and that's where they want to focus. So we're open to kind of discussing these things and working with developers in any situation, essentially.
Yeah, with what you said about, you have to customize it for the game, I know as community director for Buildbox, I've over the years have a lot of people just kind of asking for a blanket, how do I do monetization? And they want a one size fits all. And I always try to explain, like, it's customizable, it varies based on several different factors, most importantly your game. So I think that's an important takeaway. How would you go about getting organic installs?
So That's a really good question. I think a lot of organics, there's things that you can do to help out. If you have a really good thumbnail that if people's seen it on the App Store, instantly makes them want to kind of click onto that store page. You've got that good store page to kind of carry the user in. While screenshots look fantastic, it's a really fun looking video. Then that all helps just to encourage people that do find your game to install it. I do think that a lot of organics tend to come after you've got a certain level of scale in the game, just because that helps push the game up the charts a little bit. Your app starts showing as recommendations on the store for other apps that might have active acquisition, and so organics is something that tends to go in hand with scale. And so as you hit that certain amount, it just helps boost it that extra way.
Also, like if you want to make a game that relies on organics, it will be a challenge, because typically you might need to rely on a really big PR effort that essentially feeds off of something super unique and super innovative about the game itself. So it might be controlled in a way that's kind of a bit wacky and gets people's attention in that respect. Like maybe you have to like shout on the phone. I saw some games recently, a little while ago, where you had to kind of shout at the phone to control the character. And there's always a risk with that you kind of see this quick uptake in organic installs, but that's then not as sustainable potentially.
Absolutely. All right, how about this? How does Kwalee get your ideas for your internally developed games?
I like this question. So we have a kind of, what's the way to say it? Scheme, I guess. Like the Creative Wednesday scheme at Kwalee, where anybody in the company can pitch a game. So the next kind of hit game doesn't necessarily need to be coming from designers or developers that are working on games constantly, but it could come from anybody in any part of the company, because anyone can have ideas, right? And hyper-casual is a lot about tapping into something that appeals to as many people as possible, so a wide audience, and things that kind of touch on ideas that people see quite regularly in their everyday life. So me and Jack work quite a lot on pitches for our Creative Wednesdays scheme at Kwalee as well, and we love doing that. We kind of talk, when we could talk over the desks, we kind of talk to each other over the desks, be sketching stuff out and coming up with these concepts for games that we think will be interesting to see, something that we think will be fun to play. Jack?
I fully agree. I think there's a lot of inspiration that can be taken from like everyday tasks or objects as well. And a question that gets asked a lot around the office, is like, could this be hyper casualized? Or next hyper casual game. So just always kind of asking yourself that, even, just looking at something you can do and thinking, how can I gamify this? Is usually enough to get like a core loop going. And before you know it, you're able to grow that idea, what if we added this, or what if it looked like this? Or it's just kind of that starting point.
I find myself doing and seeing things and then thinking, is there a game in that? And I've, like, since I started at Kwalee, I've been talking to people about it, and it's not just me that's been kind of going through that thought process. There's lots of people that have been going, yeah, I do that all the time. If I see something happen, or if I'm doing something, and I just think, is there a game in that? Is there some way of making that into like a fun, hyper-casual game? Which is a really interesting, exciting kind of way to think.
Do you have a good story on that one? Like, what's the strangest place you draw an inspiration from?
One place I drew inspiration from for a pitch that I haven't actually given to the company yet was for, I was cleaning out my freezer, and it was really satisfying to like chip away at all of these chunks of ice with like a really nice flat surface on the bottom of them, but like a rough edge where all the ice has fallen out. So it's things like that where they're kind of mundane everyday activities, but you can kind of see how something might work in terms of making that into a game.
You could say every moment of your life could potentially be somewhere to draw inspiration in this industry.
Yeah, definitely. And you can kind of take those ideas that you have and play existing games, play games that are in like the top 10, top 50, even like top 200 games to get inspiration on what is working in hyper-casual, what feels good, what doesn't quite feel good, like what is appealing to you, and how you want to kind of guide that idea that you've had.
Absolutely. All right. Got a few more of these submitted questions left, and then we'll take a couple live questions. So for anybody submitting live questions, we appreciate your patience and appreciate you tuning in. Would Kwalee consider publishing a game that wasn't particularly hyper casual, but instead has a narrative?
So that's a really good question. Ultimately, if you're uncertain, would they be interested in this game? Definitely submit it. We are open to testing, like I mentioned earlier, other genres, things that maybe lean slightly into hyper casual or slightly out. If you do have something that is a narrative, and it kind of, we think there's that potential there, it looks good, looks promising still, then I think, that would absolutely move through the process. And, we then provide feedback afterwards. Let's say it doesn't necessarily hit all of the KPIs, we can provide feedback on, okay, like there is definitely potential here still. Here's some stuff we can do that we think from our experience will maybe help on either the marketing side or to attract more users into it. So I think, we're in a position to be very flexible in, the types of games that we look at. So don't, look at the portfolio or is this hyper casual, just send it over. We'll be in touch. We'll be more than happy to take a look at anything that you've been willing to kind of sink your time into and put your creativity into.
Absolutely. All right. Well, final couple of questions. A big important one. What's the most important thing you look for in a game?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think like for any hyper casual game or casual game or mid-core game, having that really fun mechanic that makes up like the core of a game is really, really important. Because if you don't have that, even if you do have these wonderful looking assets, if the idea behind it isn't something that at its root is something that people want to play, then it's likely to struggle. And a lot of the time this is through like unique ideas that maybe people haven't seen before, or it's a twist on an existing trend that makes people think, oh, that looks fun, I want to play that. And then, after that point, then you kind of start building up the visuals, making it look nice, but having that clear picture of, this is how the game is going to play is really, really crucial.
Absolutely. Are there any other tips you have for boxers looking to get a publishing deal with Kwalee?
Yeah, so I think the best piece of advice is to just have a go at something, even if you haven't produced a game at first, or you're new to the industry, or you have a lot of experience in it. Have a crack. Buildbox is super easy to use. Get like some game footage of it or a link and send it over to us, and we'll be more than happy to take a look at that point. And like I said, we're really, really open. We work with people who have a variety of different experience, and if we can be there to share our knowledge of what we know works, what we know doesn't, and kind of help you learn through sharing our knowledge over time of how to accelerate your process or get more games across the line, then it's something that we're absolutely looking to do. And it just kind of takes that bit of determination of being prepared. Maybe the first idea doesn't work, but the developers that succeed tend to be the ones who continue to have a go, continue to say, okay, I see why this idea or this concept might not have worked, but I'm going to adapt that going forwards. I'm going to look to consistently improve after each iteration, after each prototype. And it's fantastic to see that kind of progression of skill and understanding.
Hello, sorry you lost me there for a second.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Feeling well with the heat.
Well, we were just doing the last sent-in question, which was, do you have any other tips for the boxers looking to get a publishing deal with Kwalee?
Gotcha. I think always kind of question your concept and your idea, even as you're kind of prototyping it. Like, is this fun? Can people play it with one hand? And think about kind of how people are interacting with your game, essentially. There's a lot of tips that we can offer, and I think probably more than we can run through right now. But yeah, there's a lot of things like questioning your idea and looking at different areas to draw inspiration on, to keep kind of iterating, keep working on it. And each time especially with developers that I've been working with, and I'm sure it's the same for Jack and everyone on the team. Like, we keep seeing submissions come through that each time are better and better than the last game that we saw. It's really exciting for us to see.
And yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions either. We're always happy to have calls to answer any questions that you might have that maybe we weren't able to cover today. And just having that curiosity to learn, to know more, to learn off publishers, companies that have years and years in a segment of the market. It's really crucial just to try and absorb as much information as you can.
Definitely want to be as much of a sponge as possible.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a couple live questions that came in while we've been talking. You guys, you game to answer a couple of these real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. This one comes from Ben Fowler. Can I look forward to more game jams like the recent one from Kwalee and Buildbox?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Buildbox has this fantastic community. So we're really looking forward to becoming more and more of a part of that with future game jams, presenting new concepts and ideas for you guys to go away and build these prototypes, these games from. It's something that we're really excited to do. We had a lot of fun with the last one as well. Seeing some of the creativity sort of flow from the Buildbox community has been fantastic. It's been really, really nice to see.
Yeah, I always find working with game jams and looking at the games that have come from these game jams just really exciting, and it's almost like you get like a little present at the end of it, because you get all these kind of moments of joy playing through these games that have been made usually quite quickly. It's always really impressive to see. So yeah, there'll be more of that.
Look forward to more game jam fun from both Buildbox and Kwalee in the future. All right, this one comes from Spiced Bean. Shout out to Spiced Bean, a great member of the community. What direction do you see the hyper-casual market heading as we close 2020? Will it be runners, idols, stacking games that still dominate?
I think there's something I love about hyper-casual, which is it's not always that easy to kind of predict these trends and see what's going to be just around the corner. Like, as soon as you think, I know what's coming, somebody in a hyper-casual will create a completely new concept, like a completely new spin on a game, and it will really take you by surprise. And that's one of the most exciting things about hyper-casual, I think, that it's, although you could kind of give some predictions on what is going to lead the race closing 2020, I think there is a lot of creativity out there, and I'm excited to see something coming from left field, essentially, and surprises. Jack?
Yeah, fully agree. I think that hyper-casual is such a fast-paced industry. Trying to predict too far ahead can sometimes almost hinder you, and it's almost like that race to be the one that sets the trend, to find that game that does kind of motivate others to then start trying out a different type of idea or building off that. I wouldn't. It's great to look at trends, but if you're able to come up with a new concept that maybe builds on things that are working, like whether it's 3D games are doing quite well at the moment, and then figure out a way to put a unique spin on that, then that I think is something really good to consider at looking at those slightly broader trends that you can then try and provide a specific to.
Awesome. This one comes from Gigi the Cat. Does Kwalee translate games into multiple languages?
Yes.
Yeah, so... sorry. Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, we absolutely do. It's something that, we as a publisher, it's a service we provide. It's something that we're in a fortunate position to have tech available that, for you as the developer, makes it very, very fast and easy. In our case, it's usually just a few click of a buttons and we're able to localize your whole game. So it's absolutely something that we're able to help out with.
Yeah, and I think it's something that as you start releasing your game globally, it's something that becomes more and more important to make sure that your game is suitable for the players that you're putting in front of, essentially. And that's where a publisher comes in and helps with that.
Awesome. So yeah, localization and all that can play a huge factor in taking a title to the next level.
Yeah.
All right. This next question comes from Faisal. Which type of games are the most popular as a trend in 2020? 2D or 3D?
3D. So there was a time where the top charts in hyper-casual games in general were dominated by 2D games, but I think that time has passed now. And as technologies like Buildbox are able to support 3D more and support developers creating 3D games quickly with strong art direction and looking nice, we've just seen a rise and rise and rise of 3D games, and I don't see that changing.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say if you think you have this really fantastic idea that is able to be put across in 2D, or that you think it would be better in 2D, don't let that discourage you. Still run with your idea. But if you're looking to maybe stack the odds of success, then I'd fully agree with Jake that I think lately that 3D visuals has just been helping to kind of grab people's attention a bit more. And that's why there's been a lot of successes coming from it.
And you can always have a game that you like when you've been visualizing it and thinking about it and planning it out as a 2D game, but you could present it in a 3D environment, and that can really change the game for a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like some people get very tepid or afraid of that Z-axis, but I do feel like in 2020, it's probably, you got to embrace it.
Embrace it, play around with it. Exciting things can happen.
All right. Our next question comes from Govind. Let's say a developer sends you a game hoping that it would be the next big hit, but unfortunately it does not qualify. What would you do?
So if the game doesn't qualify in terms of when we test it, it doesn't hit the KPIs that we're kind of looking for in order to progress to the next stage. So if it's lower than, say, 35% and day one retention, and the CPI is higher than, say, 25 then we would work with that developer. It depends on where it falls. Like if the game's got a crazy high CPI, and we think, like, as our team, if we would not pursue that ourselves, we would make a recommendation at that point and say, okay, it might not be worth moving on with this one. A better use of your time might be to make a new prototype. But if the game doesn't work, but we can still see that potential there, we can still see that, okay, it's not quite there, but there's definitely something. We're going to work with that developer. We're going to give feedback based on the data that we're seeing from those tests. We have like a regular meeting with the team where we will play through these games and review the data and look at exactly what we could change to give that game a better chance. And it's all about giving these games the best chance possible.
Yeah, and I think if you as a developer, someone put all that effort and creativity into a game and it doesn't work out, and you may be wondering, where do I go from here? What next? I think that just being able to sit down, have a look at maybe if there are some broad trends or what's working in the market, reach out, ask some questions, and then just have another go. Because when you look at the charts, if you're looking at those successes, it's really, really rare that is going to be that studio or that publisher's first attempt at a game. So you kind of have to be prepared to move through the failures and try and learn from them, and just keep at it until you find one that succeeds. And eventually you will get there. It's just having that kind of determination to keep pushing forward.
All right, I think we're about coming to an end here. I want to end on this question, if that's all right for you gentlemen.
Yeah, sure.
This one comes from Inky Dry Studios. What separates you from other publishing companies in the mobile game market?
That's a really good question. I think that some of the key areas that we as a publisher stand out at the moment is there's certain publishers that have a very mechanical, numerical approach. We want to make sure, and it's something that we work very, very hard at, that every developer that submits to us has that point of contact who can provide that human element, someone to help, learn, provide information, not just say, you failed, didn't hit X metric, goodbye. We want to provide more information as to that, like, here's where you did really well, here's where maybe you need to work at it a little bit more. And I think part of that is our approach of taking games that a lot of publishers would maybe look at the metrics and say, this isn't going to work. And when we look at games as Rocket Sky as an example, that now has 25, 30 plus million downloads. Originally that would have had a CPI that was turned away, and we've had games that are now successes of ours that were turned away by other publishers. But being able to be willing to put in the effort, put in the resources of creative teams to help with ads, designers to help, or maybe we need to boost the retention a bit, and just kind of sticking at it, even though on the paper maybe it isn't, ready as it is. We're kind of prepared to get our hands dirty and figure out, what can we do to get it to where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that we've got the incredible internal development team at Kwalee, and they're constantly working on prototypes and games and going through this process that a lot of the developers we're working with are going through as well. So we're able to kind of capitalize on the experience that they've got to share that experience and knowledge with the developers that we're working with, and help kind of build that knowledge and support that process of kind of working on these prototypes, these concepts, and iterating to continue improving the games that you're making.
That all sounds fantastic. I can say that Buildbox is, we partnered with Kwalee for a reason. They are definitely a class publisher, and we're super excited for our partnership with them and the community, your partnership with them as well.
Same on this end, we're super excited already seeing the creativity of the Buildbox community come through from like the game jams and everyone's enthusiasm of getting in touch. It's been really, really nice to see, and I'm really excited to kind of see what the future holds as well for the future game jams, for getting in contact with more of you guys that are using Buildbox to build these games, because it fits the industry really, really well. So.
I'm really excited.
Same here. Feelings mutual. All right. So I want to thank everybody that tuned in. We'll definitely have this available on replay if you missed some of it, and in other formats. Jake, Jack, I really appreciate your time. Was there anything you'd like to say before we part?
Just a big thank you. It's been fantastic, being here, being able to answer you guys' questions. And if you, maybe we didn't touch on something that you're curious about today, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We've got lots of ways you can get in contact with us via social media or websites, either ourselves or Buildbox. So.
Yeah, send over any questions that you've got. But I'm really excited. Thank you for your time, Sean, and thanks to all the boxers that are watching.
Absolutely. All right, everybody out there, thank you once again. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Ilya in Australia, I think might already be Saturday. Whatever day it is, make sure you're safe out there, and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.